Now, as far as the American society is concerned, the US presidents during this time were all Republicans, as Donald Trump is nowadays, and they implemented a conservative policy characterized by a series of aspects. The first one is a great optimism and faith in the American prosperity. Second one is isolationism. So governments showed interest only in their own country and were not involved in international activities. Number 3, a strong spirit of individualism. In America, wealth, la ricchezza, was distributed unequally, as rising profits were not passed on to workers, so many people were actually quite poor. Quindi praticamente i profitti rimanevano ai potenti, ai più ricchi, mentre i lavoratori restavano poveri, nonostante quest'era di grande sviluppo. For example, Hoover, who became president in 1929, just to give you a better idea what I mean by individualism in the 1920s in the United States. Hoover promised a chicken on every pot, quindi un pollo in ogni pentola for each American family, which means he promised the continuation of the economic boom, but he did not do much to help those out of work. For example, he believed that if you were in trouble, you should help yourself and not expect others to help you. So help yourself, arrangiarsi, no? And this is proved by a quote of Hoover that says, "It is not the function of the government to relieve individuals of their responsibilities to their neighbors or to relieve private institutions of their responsibilities to the public." So that was the spirit of the time. Then we have conservatism, affecting racial and national minorities, starting from restrictive immigration. So laws were passed to ensure the purity of the Yankee race. The Yankee race is the race of the natives of the United States. And these laws were passed also to prevent the spread of subversive ideologies of European origin. A very, very famous example is that of Sacco and Vanzetti. They were 2 Italian migrant anarchists who were accused of murder and were executed in 1927 despite many demonstrations in support of their innocence, just because they were anarchists, and also Italian immigrants. Anarchism is a radical political movement that is highly skeptical towards authority, but yeah, that was pretty much it. Then another aspect of this conservatism is the popularity of the Ku Klux Klan that grew dramatically, especially in the southern states in the 1920s. The Ku Klux Klan was and is, unfortunately, an American white supremacist group against the civil rights of African Americans. They used terrorism and violence against them, but they were not just against African Americans, but also Catholics, for example, and Jews. They were also excluded and looked at with suspicion by a large part of the American population because they were thought to be less civilized and less white than Americans. And then there's prohibition, which is the practice of forbidden to produce, sell, import, or transport alcoholic beverages that was introduced in 1920 because alcohol consumption was considered to be popular among black people. And so white people could not do the same things black people did because black people were considered inferior. Let's move on to the stock market boom in the United States. This new era in the United States was an era of enthusiasm, confidence, optimism, and productivity, a time when inventions such as the airplane and the radio made anything possible. So it is usually in such times, if you think about it, in such times of optimism that people take their savings out from under their mattresses, quindi letteralmente prendono i loro risparmi, i loro soldi da sotto il materasso e dalle banche and banks and invest it e li investono, no? Nella borsa. How do they invest their savings? How could they do that? Since stocks move in accordance with the economic cycle, so they increase in value when the economy is growing, which means when the demand for stocks increases, and they decrease in value when the economy is in crisis. So that means that when the demand that it happens when the demand for stocks decreases, quando la domanda invece di azioni diminuisce, allora anche il valore stesso delle azioni diminuisce. In the 1920s, as the economy grew, many Americans invested their money in the stock market in Wall Street, New York, to try to make a fortune out of it. So by the end of the decade, as you see here, 25 million Americans had placed money in the stock market. And it was easy. Everyone was confident that the United States economy would continue to grow and therefore also share prices. So the demand for stocks grew fast, causing an increase in their value because stocks increase in value when the economy is growing, which means when the demand for stocks increases. Okay. And it was easy also because people did not need a lot of cash to invest in the stock market. Even the lower and middle classes bought stocks on margin. They borrowed the money from creditors to buy stocks. That means to buy something on margin. Okay. And they did not buy stocks only. They also bought things like cars, like objects on margin, hoping to make a lot of money out of it, but also getting into serious debt. By 1929, the total amount of debt accumulated through this practice had reached $6 billion. Okay. So, as you can imagine, this kind of system couldn't last. And the main reason why was because, as we saw, stocks move in accordance with the economic cycle, and there were serious problems with the American economy. So problem number one, since prosperity depended on people continuing to spend, the problem was that many had large debts or had already bought the consumer goods they needed. So by 1929, most people who wanted and could afford luxury items like phones, fridges, cars had already got them, and the industry ended up producing more goods than people needed. So this led to overproduction. The industry was producing more than people needed and wanted to buy, and the demand did not rise as fast as production. La domanda non esauriva le produzioni, insomma. C'era troppa poca domanda rispetto a quello che veniva prodotto. Problem number 2, the boom in the United States economy did not extend to all areas of the economy, because during most of the 1920s, the agricultural sector struggled, quindi soffrì, with declining prices and orders and low wages because of a massive boost in food production. So basically, there was so much food that when farmers tried to sell their produce, they failed. And this led to a record number of farmers going bankrupt and to, for example, the migration of some of them and their families from the countryside to the cities, which is probably what happened in the first picture that we saw, in the first slide. Economic relation between the United States and Europe. To eliminate the problem of overproduction, America started to export its surplus goods, basically those goods that America could not sell, quindi i beni di troppo, insomma, che l'America non riusciva, insomma, a vendere nel proprio territorio. So America started to export its surplus goods to the rest of the world, especially Europe. And this collaboration was beneficial to both parties, and an interdependent relationship between America and Europe soon began. Because on the one side, Europe could recover from the war's devastating effects thanks to the American loans, prestiti, no? I prestiti americani. Che abbiamo visto, l'America aveva fatto molta fortuna durante la guerra, insomma. On the other side, Europe imported America's surplus goods, supporting its development and productivity. Yeah. However, by the end of 1928, American investors reduced their loans, quindi di nuovo questi prestiti che però ora vengono tolti, o meglio ridotti, più che tolti, lo vedremo più avanti quando li toglieranno, to Europe. So American investors reduced their loans to Europe to make more money by investing in the American stock market, which was having a huge success at the time. And because their economies were more interconnected than ever, this had a serious impact on the European economy, of course, but also on American industrial production, as Europeans could not afford to buy surplus goods anymore. Okay. So, yeah, we can stop here for now.